Hi Internet! Today we wanted to highlight some advanced tactica you can take advantage of in the Arena format.
There are quite a few additional rules to consider when playing Arena. Many of these rules have layers to them which can be utilized and exploited to your advantage.
The Arena format is used entirely for large tournaments like the Bay Area Open and Nova. Unfortunately, many of these tournaments were cancelled this year for safety concerns.
However, Nova is alive and well online under the name of Worldwide Open. It's an online virtual tournament using Tabletop Simulator hosted by our buddies Shane and Ryan on the Command Point Discord and being run by Kill Team veteran Matt Hurl. This tournament goes live the day the video drops.
We'll start off with some tips for newer players and get more advanced as we go. At the tail end of the video, we'll cover a few interesting FAQ items for the Worldwide Open. So without further ado, let's get started.
We wanted to take a moment to bring up the concept of stacking primary and secondary objectives. This is mostly for newer players who may have their first experience with secondary objectives in the Arena format.
The concept has to do with the player agency you have in Arena, and most competitive formats now, in choosing how you earn half your victory points. The key to success is choosing the secondary objectives that not only complement your faction's strengths and playstyle, but also can potentially stack with other secondaries or even the primary objective.
This takes some practice to get the hang of, almost like seeing the code in the Matrix. But we'll highlight a couple of examples so you can see what we're getting at. For this example, we will use the competitive play mission Claim the Catacombs on pages 26 and 27 of the Arena manual.
In this mission, there are 5 points on the Catacombs map that mark the objectives for your primary objective. In addition, the secondary objectives are Attrition, Bounty Hunters, Domination, Recon Sweep, and Thin Their Ranks, as well as a bespoke objective, Contain.
The secondary Domination requires a presence at the center of the board. Well, how handy is it that there's an objective there as well? Seems like a no-brainer to take that and not only hold that point, but also try and claim Domination. This is particularly important if your army has fewer models than your opponent, as you'll need to consolidate your forces more than they will in order to claim objectives and score those primary points.
On that same thought, we can see the contained bespoke objective and the primary objective also stack. And if you're doubling down on this positioning strategy, you also are in the vicinity of 2 to 3 objectives easily. This is more ideal for a horde-like kill team, as they can split their forces and still be a threat with their extra numbers. These are just 2 examples to get the thought process started for you. Take time to formulate a plan and always try to maximize the impact of your models by looking for interactions like these.
Now into the nitty-gritty. First with a discussion on blocking doors.
The obvious interaction is standing within 1 inch of a door and hoping for the 5-up to deny the door to open. Not much of a strategy if you're relying on a 33% chance for success. More importantly is what that model does for you even if your opponent opens the door in your face.
Aside from very specific rules, even the smallest and cheapest points cost model will completely block that door even when open. The close confines of Arena will prevent any of your opponent's models from coming through that door as long as you don't leave enough room for a 25mm or a 32mm base to fit between your model and the door frame. Either way, to do that they would need to charge you and be in combat, so they're still not going to be getting around you.
This can shut off entire sectors of the board to your opponent. This can be done in the many hallways in Arena as well. If you don't have a small or low points cost or disposable model, you can instead do the same with a strong and survivable model.
If that model costs a whopping 30 points, or even more, they can still be giving you a massive return on investment if they're shutting out the equivalent points worth of models from advancing through. And you can't put a points cost on board control, which is key to any competitive format.
And on that note, you can't put a points cost on the relative safety that the rest of your army is in. If you're not worried about an advancing army from one side, you can more aggressively position in a way you wouldn't if that flank was still threatened. The concept of plugging a hole really pays back dividends in Arena.
But Emmanuel and Alex, you say? That's still not very advanced. Well, fine, you're right. But it's probably one of the most important parts of positioning in Arena. Doors and their shenanigans define the Arena experience.
Another basic but important tactic for Arena is the power of the veteran move. Unless you are playing in a modified arena format like the Bay Area Open 2020, all doors start closed in arena. This means, to even get out of your deployment zone, one model needs to open a door and then stay behind for battle round 1 while the rest of the force trudges forward into glorious battle.
By spending 1 CP before the first battle round, a veteran specialist can use their tactic, called adaptive tactics, to simply open the door. Then, at the start of the battle round, you have one more model up in the thick of it.
You can even use this to your advantage and advance this model forward if a door isn't present, potentially spending an additional CP for a decisive move to then block a hallway or a door and prevent your opponent from filling out one side of the board.
And similar to the veteran move is the cult ambush from the Genestealer cult army.
I've always warned you about those heretics.
You're zogging right, you did! It was ruled at SoCal Open 2019 that the cult ambush is considered a normal move, and therefore any model that successfully was able to get their ambush could open a door, letting their buddies spill forward if they themselves get their ambush off as well.
This can get out of hand very quickly, and if enough go off, allow you to claim a large part of the board before the game even starts. Pyramid demonstrated this to great effect at the aforementioned SoCal Open 2019 tournament.
And now for even more door shenanigans. This and the following point rely on the fact that you cannot measure through a door while it's closed, which can then let you surprise your opponent.
According to the rules, you cannot make a move, advance, or fallback move and get within 1 inch of an enemy opponent. If your opponent is close to a door, however, you can move right up to that door without technically coming within 1 inch of that model, as you cannot measure through that door when it is closed.
Once that door is opened, however, you can now measure that distance and find yourself within 1 inch of your opponent. This is a fantastic way to get into combat with a model that you'd be worried about charging, such as a flamer or a Deathwatch frag cannon.
And to build on that, a quick point to mention is that these models can shoot their pistols in that very same battle round. Remember, you can fire a pistol in combat as long as neither model made a charge move that battle round.
Since combat happens simply by opening a door and not from a charge, both models are eligible for making a pistol shooting attack. This can be a great way to engage a model in the shooting phase if your target doesn't have a pistol or if their pistol is worse than yours.
Even if your opponent moves second and decides to fall back out of combat, which they can do because they weren't charged, they still cannot shoot while you can shoot your pistol or any other ranged weapons you have at that point. You effectively limit their shooting options by opening a door into combat.
Moving away from doors, another big rule addition for Arena is the tactic Point Blank Overwatch. This and the following tactica revolve around understanding the wording and the sequence of this tactic.
It's worth discussing the sequence of events before we get into the tactica revolving around it. The best way to understand this tactic is to think of it as a sequence of events as follows.
Number 1, your opponent declares a charge and pauses for you to react.
Number 2, you spend 1 CP to use the tactic Point Blank Overwatch, choosing one model that was declared target of the charge.
Number 3, your opponent rolls their charge attempt.
Number 4, if they are successful, you choose at which point along their path you will fire your Overwatch. At this point, follow all the Overwatch rules as described in the core manual.
Number 5, if they are unsuccessful, or if they have selected multiple models and choose a path that never comes in line of sight of your chosen model, then you do not fire Overwatch. Your CP is spent and the tactic is used.
So now that's reviewed, we'll talk about baiting the Overwatch. A bit of a meta and mind game within Arena is trying to get your opponent to spend their point-blank Overwatch tactic when it's convenient for you.
Arena really allows for the charging player to set up many models in positions that give them a blind charge, meaning a charge attempt where the target of the charge does not have line of sight. By setting up models for easy charges, you can often bait your opponent into using the tactic.
For example, when choosing less valuable models to make the first charge attempts into a big gun, you'll find that your opponent may opt to spend their CP to fire Overwatch when they'd rather have saved it for a more threatening charging model. Reason being here that if they are successfully charged, they won't have the chance to fire Overwatch at all later on.
Now, that tactic is somewhat basic, but it's necessary to review as it leads into a deeper discussion on forcing an opponent to waste their point-blank Overwatch.
Remember, in the sequence of events, the CP and tactic are spent even if the model doesn't make the charge into the chosen model. This fact is key, as there are a few scenarios that can lead to you never having to suffer the Overwatch to begin with.
For example, simply if you fail the charge, the sequence is over, but now your opponent no longer has the option to use a tactic for the rest of the battle round. Simple enough.
But what if you could force a failure? You may opt to spend a command point for your tactical reroll to reroll and hope to fail the charge, even if your first attempt was successful. This protects your model from Overwatch, albeit they're not doing anything for the rest of the battle round, but it sets up a scenario where your opponent now does not have further agency to fire Overwatch on a blind charge.
This gets more interesting if you have the option to make your chances of success even lower. Strange concept for Kill Team. For orcs at least, you can opt to use a tactic for 1 CP called Here We Go, which allows you to choose one die and re-roll just that one instead of both. You can then choose to re-roll the 6 instead of the 1, and therefore further increase your chances of failure. This is a niche example, I know, and it's for one faction, but it's cheeky enough to not ignore.
But there's another way to deny point-blank Overwatch, or even make your opponent not spend it when they normally would, and that's declaring multiple charge targets. As the tactic is, your opponent has to select one model that can fire their blind Overwatch if they can see you once you make your charge move. If you select multiple charge targets, two things may happen.
1. Your opponent may use the point-blank Overwatch tactic on one of their models, allowing you to make your charge towards the other charge target. If they have spent their CP and use their tactic, they cannot shoot Overwatch on this charge with that other model, and also cannot use this tactic for the remainder of the battle round.
And 2, they may recognize this likely outcome and simply decide to save their CP and use of the tactic. This still gives you a favorable situation, as you still prevent them from firing Overwatch.
And finally, our last two topics for the tactica have to do with navigating the close confines of the arena board. Once you get a couple games under your belt, you'll realize how important positioning is. That is, if you don't have the fly keyword, or other special rules such as the Harlequin flip belts, which allow for increased maneuverability.
For models without those abilities, placing a single model out of position can cut off your entire kill team from moving into a sector of the board. And of course, your opponent can simply do this to you by parking a 25mm base right in the middle of a door or hallway. Be careful for the bumps or nibs on the sides of the arena board, as these frequently catch newer players off guard as they also block movement.
If your model has the fly keyword, or a rule like the Harlequin's flip belt, this is a non-issue. You can move over models as if they weren't there, giving you a lot more agency and maneuverability in arena, which can surprise the heck out of your opponent if they're not prepared for that.
These nibs or bumps in the walls actually do serve a purpose, not just to block movement. They are actually intended to provide cover from shooting attacks.
Now remember, to check for obscurity in arena, the shooting model needs to be able to draw a line from a single point of their base to every point on their target's base in order to not be considered obscured. By sticking your model behind one of these nibs, you hide a tiny bit of their base. This is intended to simulate close confines firefights in hallways, where combatants are taking cover against elements of the wall.
This provides obscurity and cover, so not only does it provide a -1 to your opponent's hit roll, but also a -1 to the injury roll. It's a simple positioning choice to make that is so important, and because it's not immediately apparent, it's not recognized by many players.
And that's it for our tactica discussion of the arena format.
As we mentioned at the top of the video, there is a tournament going live today run on the Command Point Discord by Kill Team veteran Matt Pearl. This is called the Worldwide Open, and there's a link to their Discord in the video description below.
The sign up for the tournament is now closed, but if you're watching this video close to its release, you can catch many of those games being broadcast live on their Discord and on their Twitch channel.
We did want to take some time to highlight a few items on the packet FAQ that we found particularly important, specifically for the arena format.
First and foremost are consolidation moves. Doors come into play quite often in arena, and when a model takes its target out in combat, the consolidation move direction may not be immediately obvious.
Two FAQ points that cover this are for the situation where a door blocks the obvious direction of your consolidation, and when doors have completely closed in your model.
For the first point, the closest physical model may be on the opposite side of a door, but they are not technically the closest enemy model. Remember, distances between models cannot be measured through walls, and a closed door is, for all intents and purposes, a wall.
To explain it more deliberately, when you are about to make your consolidation move, you must first determine where the next closest enemy model is. It's not the physical distance between the pieces on the board, but rather the distance between models as measured when playing Arena.
In this example, you can see that the orc has taken out its target. There are two enemy models near it, but one is blocked by a door. As the orc cannot measure through the door, the lesser distance is to the other model around the corner and down the hall. Therefore, the consolidation has to be towards that model.
The other FAQ entry regarding consolidation concerns when a model is completely sealed off in a room with all exit doors closed without any enemy models in the room. Therefore, since the model, technically speaking, has no enemy models it can measure to, it is effectively completely alone.
It's not too dissimilar to the situation where a model defeats a last opponent on an open board layout. If there's no enemy target, it cannot end up closer to anything, therefore a consolidation move cannot be made. This is the same reasoning behind why basing a model prevents pile-ins and consolidations. It is impossible to end closer, therefore the move is not allowed.
Now to faction-specific Arena FAQ items. We've got 4 worth noting. First is how concealed positions are handled for Adeptus Astartes infiltrators and eliminators. The FAQ dictates how to measure the 9-inch distance from your opponent's deployment zone.
You are instructed to measure through doorways. This is pretty significant, as in the scenario where closed doors would block the measurement, you could effectively pile in all of your infiltrators and eliminators, blocking all the doorways and locking your opponent into their deployment zone.
Next, and this is a quick one, is how the cult ambush rule is managed with respect to doors.
Just to review for any who do not know, this is a rule for the Genestealer cults that we discussed earlier in the video, and for the majority of their models, at the end of deployment, they can roll a d6, and on a 5-up, they can move up to 6 inches.
At SCO 2019, and carried forward here in this FAQ, this 6-inch move is considered a normal move. Therefore, any model whose cult ambush goes off can open a door. This makes the cults very threatening in Arena, and we're happy to see this consistency in ruling from tournament to tournament.
Another interesting interaction we see in this FAQ is how horror splits for the demon kill team are handled with respect to a door. It's a very niche situation, but for example, if a pink horror or blue horror splits during the movement phase, perhaps dying in Overwatch, the newly replaced models are permitted to open a door.
The reasoning for this is that these models are new models, and are considered to have normal moved, per reinforcement rules, even if their parent horror died in a charge move attempt, for example. As such, they are permitted to do what any model would do at the end of a normal move, like opening a door.
And finally, for a really cool and rare kill team, we have an entry in the FAQ for the Gellerpox. This relates to the Gellerpox tactic, the machine glitch.
As this is not likely a well-known tactic, we'll go through it now. In this tactic, if one of your glitchling models is within 1 inch of a doorway, you can spend 1 CP to add 3 to your dice on a roll-off. However, this is a tactic related to the rules in the Rogue Trader campaign supplement on how doors function, which is not exactly the same as in Arena.
In Arena, in order to block a door from being opened or closed by an opponent, you have to roll a 5-up on a d6. This FAQ states that you simply add the 3 from this tactic to that roll, effectively turning it into a 2-up for success.
And that's it. Arena is really fun, and while we've covered quite a few tactica in this video, it is by no means exhaustive.
If you have a neat trick or a powerful tactic you use in Arena, we'd love to hear about it. Drop it in the comments below and share it with us and with the community.
And don't forget to check out the Worldwide Open Tournament on the Command Point Discord. Link is in the description below.